Welcome to another real-time strategy top 10 video. My name is Medic, and this time we are discussing the top 5 factions missing in Total War Warhammer 2. This is my opinion, with some hypothetical queries and pitches thrown in, so bear that in mind. Share your list down below and let me know what you think. Starting off the list, we go to a realm that would be a familiar name to anyone who enjoyed the Fable games. Number 5. Albion. In a long time before man first discovered the secret of fire, millennia before the first elf learned the art of the bow, a race known only as the Old Ones forged the world. Legends tell of how they manipulated the ebb and flow of magic to mould the land to their will, and how they sowed the seeds that would form into the vast forests that cover the world. The races of elves, dwarves and men were like children to them, whom they nurtured and taught. It is said that even the great dragons were mere playthings to these godlike beings. In time, the Old Ones chose the island of Albion as one of the locations to build their homes. Little is known of their settlements, for few have ever visited Albion, let alone returned from this mysterious place. They forged an island paradise where the sun shone bright and the crops flourished. Gathering together the wisest and bravest individuals of each race, they taught them magic and other skills. They demonstrated the secret of forging runes to the dwarves, and to the elves they taught the mastery of spellcasting. The Old Ones believed that the race that they called man was too primitive to learn, but they were quickly surprised at the speed mankind adapted to its surroundings. They were so impressed that they chose to teach a select few of the cave-dwelling tribesmen some of their secrets. Those they taught went by the name of truth-sayers, for it was their duty to teach the other tribesmen the true path to enlightenment. They instructed their students to spread across the world and populate the continents, whilst all the time the Old Ones kept a watchful eye over their subjects. They, in turn, were worshipped as gods, and temples were erected in their honour. The race of man impressed the Old Ones for the most, for he seemed to be able to adapt to any climate, and small tribes quickly flourished in every corner of the world. Carvings upon the slant pyramid temples found deep within the jungles of Lustria, and the earliest songs of the High Elf bards tell of a great catastrophe that befell the noble Old Ones. A magical gateway, their portal to other distant worlds, collapsed, and they were forced to flee the fledgling world that they had created, lest they become stranded. Unable to help those races they had brought into the world, the Old Ones had little choice but to leave them to fend for themselves. Their parting gift was to create a race of giant warriors to protect the people of Albion. Albion is a small, windswept island off the coast of Norska in the Great Ocean. It is said that it rains every day in Albion. The islands are shrouded in mist and heavy fog, and the land is predominantly bogs, marshes and fens. This damp and gloomy environment is inhabited by tribes of woad-wearing humans, led by truth-sayers, guardians of the mysterious Ogun stones, and inhabited by creatures such as giants and the strange Fimir. Albion as a faction is currently missing on both the Great Vortex campaign map and the Mortal Empires map. The island is there, but there is nothing there other than chaos. This faction is a very minor one, which is why it's number 5 on my list, but unlike other factions like Nippon or Cathay, their land is actually in the game. It has the opportunity to have a very mysterious and ancient feel to it, with strong magic. With the ties to the Old Ones, it would fit well into the current Warhammer 2 feel. Number 4. Demons of Chaos. Demons of Chaos are a faction which were in my original top 10 missing factions in Total War Warhammer. I have covered a lot of what I wanted to say in that video about the possibilities of this faction being in the game, but I wanted to expand on that with a focus on this second game now being available. But a quick refresher, it is not just men who fight for Archaon and the gods of chaos to earn their favour, it is also the realms of chaos itself. This faction is not just one really, but 4. Each god of chaos has its own multitude of demonic monsters at their disposal, ready to unleash upon the old world. The demons of Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch and Slaanesh all have their own special abilities, weaknesses, hatreds and magic, their own unique leaders, heroes, history and units. Nurgle unleashes deadly plague bearers, plague toads, plague drones and the Great Unclean One. Tzeentch releases screamers, pink horrors, flamers, blue horrors and the Lord of Change. Khorne demands his bloodletters, blood crushers, flesh hounds and bloodthirsters to quench his thirst with the blood of the old world, while Slaanesh desires her followers such as the Daemonettes, Seekers of Slaanesh, Seeker Chariots, and the Keeper of Secrets to spread her corruption and deadly temptation across the lands. This variety of units could easily fill an army roster. They have fast cavalry, flying units with poison, chariots, skirmish units, bulky melee units, wizards, heroes, swarms, heavy cavalry, and even long-range artillery. They could each have their own faction leader hero. Epidemus for Nurgle, the Changeling for Tzeentch, Skulltaker for Khorne, and the Mask of Slaanesh for, well, Slaanesh, each with their own abilities and disadvantages reflecting the god that they are fighting for. In the lore, the Chaos Gods share a hatred for each other. Tzeentch hates Nurgle for their nature being completely against change, which Nurgle in turn hates Tzeentch for. Being the god of entropy and decay, Nurgle naturally hates the god who enjoys progress and restoration. Khorne hates Tzeentch and Slaanesh only because he respects strength, and they use other methods of confrontation which he deems cowardly and sneaky. Tzeentch and Slaanesh in response hate Khorne as they see him as a dumb brute. Khorne and Nurgle get along mildly, same with Slaanesh and Tzeentch, but with the gods of chaos it is not always so black and white. Many times will come when they all hate each other equally, or band together peacefully and fight for one purpose. The latter is a lot rarer than the former, but in recent years it has come true for just one man, one purpose, Archaon. Demons of Chaos could easily stand as their own faction, but they could also just bolster the Chaos faction's roster. When starting a campaign as Chaos, you could choose to be aligned with a specific god of Chaos. Then, from there, you lock yourself out of recruiting certain units, but then gain abilities and specializations based on your god of choice. Your hero would either be demon or human, and then the rest would play out as a normal Chaos campaign. If you picked Slaanesh, for example, you would not be able to recruit Bloodess of Khorne, but you could recruit Seekers of Slaanesh. You would then pick from Sigvald the Magnificent or the Mask of Slaanesh, as they would both be their starting legendary lords. If you couldn't pick a Chaos god, you could pick Chaos Undivided. This allows you to recruit all units available to all gods, but due to this you would experience infighting, attrition, and low morale as a result of the demonic units hating one another. Led by Archaon the Everchosen, it will be a very powerful roster, mixed with the challenge of making sure you can control your armies without them killing each other before they even reach the enemy armies. Demons of Chaos would be a great addition to the game, especially due to the Great Vortex, but my belief is that they may be held back for the third installment of the trilogy, especially if the third game will cover the Room and End Times content. Because of this, they are number 4 on my list. Number 3. Arabi. South of Tilia, past the stormy seas of the Black Gulf, lies the Kingdom of Arabi. Here the decadent caliphs and sultans rule cities made of white stone, and their realms are the vast deserts, oases that glitter like jewels, and mountains inhabited by fierce nomad warriors. Several great cities form a loose coalition, though in effect they are all independent states with their own rulers, traditions and customs. The Sultan of all Arabi claims to rule the whole peninsula, but has real little power over the independent coastal city-states or over the fierce nomad tribes who wander the great desert of Arabi. Arabians have some knowledge of gunpowder weapons, but their religious dogmas prevent them from developing socially and technologically. Arabians worship a single god who is manifested on the world by his chosen prophets and a share of common language. Sorcerers in Arabi are said to be able to catch genies in bottles who, upon uncorking, rise to immense size to do the bidding of their master, and these wizards are rumoured to fly upon carpets. Mystery shrouds the study of necromancy. To learn the dark art, an aspirant must either seek a necromancer and become an apprentice, or acquire one of the forbidden tomes such as the Book of the Dead, written by the mad Arabian prince Abdul ben Rashid. He travelled to the land of the dead and east of Arabi, and driven mad by his experiences, he wrote his blasphemous masterpiece. He did not live to see the widespread public revulsion of his work, or the great pyre where the Caliph of Kab Sabah burned all the copies he could find. Unfortunately, the Caliph did not find them all. The toughest fighters come from the nomadic tribes of the deserts, who are greatly feared by the more civilized traders who ply their trade along the caravan routes through the great deserts. The most notable warriors of Arabi are the dervishes, fanatic religious warriors all too willing to die for their god. Another famous type are the eunuchs, individuals trained since birth to serve as warriors or guards. This faction, I feel, would be a nice change for anyone wanting to play as the Empire, with a bit of a fresh coat of paint. A slightly different Empire faction in the Mortal Empires campaign, with different units, magic, mechanics and alliances, will flesh out and give variety to the southern area of the map a bit more. Rather than being flooded with vampire counts, Bretonnia pilgrimages and the odd dwarf hold, some nice Arabian Nights themed humans could vary the matchups more and give more depth to the region's battles. Arabi could focus on trade and gave massive income buffs for certain trade deals with certain empires. For example, trading silk with the Empire or spices to the High Elves could give the faction a slight morale or public order boost. Their main source of income would be ports and trade, making their faction actually focus on taking settlements that allow more items to be included in their trade deals. They would not suffer attrition from the raging sands of the Arabi desert, and could even have a trade caravan mechanic. You would have to send an army alongside an AI-controlled trade wagon and protect it on their way to its destination. If you managed to do this, a big payout and trade deal would be agreed. Arabi would be a nice bit of variety which would fit perfectly in the area in which they belong. Having a sorcerer riding into battle on a magic carpet mount and unleashing a genie that could devastate the enemy is worth it on its own. Number 2. Tomb Kings. The Tomb Kings, known as the Priest Kings in their former lives, are the undying rulers of Nehekahara, an ancient human civilization that formed a great and powerful empire some 2,500 years before the birth of Sigmar Heldenhammer and the founding of the Empire of Man. Out of all the unliving creatures that would claim dominion and royalty over the dead, only the Tomb Kings could truly claim such masterful and undisputed sovereignty. They once ruled a mighty and far-flung empire during a time where the rest of mankind were little more than savage barbarians. Long ago, during an ancient and forgotten age, the civilization of Nekehara stood as the shining beacon of civilization and human achievement, a golden age where its cities shone with a majestic splendor, its buildings crafted from magnificent marble and limestone, its armors conquering entire kingdoms from the face of the earth, and their mighty rulers reigning as living gods amongst man. But this great realm was razed millennia ago through acts of great treachery and powerful sorcery. The living of the land had long ago perished in a single mournful night, and in their absence the dead stirred from their graves and claimed the land anew. Even as their ancient civilization now lies buried beneath the sand, their once verdant plains turned to searing desert, and their mighty and glorious empire fractured and in ruin. The Tomb Kings have once more awoken from their deep sleep. Rising from their decrepit sarcophagi, the mummified rulers of the Nehekahara awoke with a thirst for power. Conquest and vengeance was just as strong in death as they were in life. They are coming to reclaim that which is rightfully theirs, their legions innumerable, rising up from the scorching sand, brandishing weapons of polished bronze and priceless gold, ancient, emotionless and spiteful to all those who had slighted them. Woe and betid those who would be foolish enough to stand before their silent onslaught. The Tomb Kings have so much lore in the old world, from the rise of Setra to their golden age, up to the time of treachery with the rise of Nagash, the arch necromancer, and the fall of Nehekahara. It would be a shame to not include them into the world. The land of the dead and the great city of Khemri, and of course the pyramid of Nagash, is already in the game, just waiting for their true masters to return. An undead faction with actual range capability, powerful necromancers, terrifying monsters and impactful chariot charges. Tomb Kings will come, that's certain, which is why they are number 2 on my list, not number 1. That is for a faction that is completely different, unusual, and has the capability of being one of the most unique playstyles of any faction in Total War Warhammer. Number 1. Dogs of War. This is a bit of an odd one, but one that would be a nice addition to the game. Dogs of War in Warhammer Fantasy are essentially mercenaries. Rogues, ruffians, traders, warriors and soldiers of fortune. The Dogs of War would be a faction unlike any other. When playing against them, they would be neutral to all factions and be unable to become allied or at war with anyone. You could only interact with the faction through diplomacy and direct contact with certain Dogs of War camps throughout the lands. The higher your relations with the faction, the better units you could hire from them, starting with standard lowly Empire swordsmen or goblin mercenaries at very low relation ratings, up to Golfag's ogre man-eaters or Leopold's leopard company with high or very high ratings. You could gain this influence of the Dogs of War faction by hiring lower tier units and gaining them experience in battle, increasing those units' renown. The more experience units gets, the more money they demand off of you, and the more influence with the Dogs of War you receive in turn. They could have very high upkeep costs, but be very powerful on the field. You would only have them for a certain amount of turns. Once their contract ends, they demand their fee and disappear. If you can't pay the fee, then a small raiding army will appear randomly in your province. Once you reach a certain rating, by visiting Dog of War camps you could hire the more legendary units from the faction, but these would be very expensive and come with very short contracts as they would be in demand from other factions. Plus, there would always be the chance that they are bought out by your enemies and turn on you mid-battle. They wouldn't even need this map presence, however. They could just be a tab when you don't play as them. They would act much like the High Elves influence system, but for every faction. Playing as the Dogs of War would be an entirely different experience, unlike any in Total War Warhammer. As I've already stated, you would never be at war with anyone and could not declare yourself as an ally to any. You would only be able to interact and conquer other rogue Dogs of War faction camps. Your income would come directly through your contracts and units. Your armies would be entirely mixed and very expensive, but you would hardly ever fight on the battlefield as your own general, only when you take out other rogue companies and want to spread your influence in a specific region. When playing Dogs of War, each unit you lend out to hire to a faction, you would play as in faction battles. So let's say the Dark Elves hired the Cursed Company to fight some invading High Elves with that unit in their roster. When the battle begins, you will control that unit. Depending on how you act in the battle with that unit, how many kills you get, the value for money you deliver, and what monsters you kill, will gain you more gold at the end of the fight. If you run away or deliberately do poorly, you would receive a penalty to your unit and receive a lower standing with that faction. After all, why would they hire more of your men if they perform so poorly for them? Another interesting concept with this could be double crossing. You may be hired by a faction, but on the eve of battle, the opposing faction may offer to buy you out. Mid-battle, your allegiance would change and you would fight your so-called allies. Through this, one faction's influence would go down, but another would go up. This way gives you more control over which factions you want to be influential with, which are not worth your time, or men, or money. When discussing this with my friend Jimmy Von Two Scoops from the many Let's Plays on his channel, he stated the following. The main problem with the game, and what I can see being a massive problem with Mortal Empires, is that, at a point, it's just too unwieldy to manage all of the settlements you have. So having a faction who sidesteps all of that and focuses on a part of the game which can get neglected once you get over 100 turns is a great idea. I'm a massive fan of being able to influence key points maybe within this world. Say the Empire are about to get wrecked and they hire you on a ridiculous contract as part of their last stand against the vampires, and you play a decisive role in winning it. Then 50 turns later they have destroyed the vampires and are the most powerful faction in the game at that time. The pleasure I would get from that is massive. Because of me, I have saved the Empire, and that was the start of their resurgence into the world, and I got paid very handsomely for doing it. Another plus is that it's so unique. You could have so many different memorable campaigns where maybe in one or another you were there on the day dwarves were destroyed fighting with the orcs, or even the bitter feeling of not helping save a race. You fought with the Wood Elves and couldn't stop them from being destroyed by the High Elves. It's a fantastic idea, because it plays into what the models and essentially what of all the Warhammer is about, your own army and story, creating and shaping a world as you would want to see it, with chance, skill and a little luck being the driving forces behind that vision. And maybe enjoying that with a friend, whether he may help his race prosper or hinder his dream to make your own. I think that would tap into the spirit of Warhammer more than Total War does at the moment. This is a very cool concept that would be great fun to play. You would be less of a conquering general and more of an aspiring entrepreneur into the old Warhammer world. Bored of taking over settlements, managing public order and dealing with pesky invaders? Play as the Dogs of War and enjoy varied battles, an interesting income system, and taking a bit more relaxed backseat to the battles of the old world. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember that this is just my opinion, and I would love if you shared your opinion down below in the comments. Thank you.